You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. Marcus Aurelius, what if I told you that the most powerful way to respond to disrespect, manipulation, or indifference is to do nothing at all? No arguments, no explanation, no dramatic exits, just silence, intentional, controlled, and deeply unsettling to the other person. Most people think punishment means confrontation, raised voices, long messages, closure talks. But the Stoics understood something far more dangerous. Detachment hurts more than words ever could. When you stop reacting, stop chasing, stop proving, you remove the fuel. And without fuel, their power over you collapses. Detachment isn't weakness. It's not avoidance. It's mastery. It's choosing self-respect over validation. It's letting people feel the weight of your absence instead of the noise of your anger. If you've ever felt disrespected, taken for granted, or ignored after giving your energy freely, this video is for you. Because once you understand how detachment works psychologically, emotionally, and strategically, you'll never beg for attention again. Watch this video till the very end. The final principle ties everything together, and if you apply it correctly, you'll notice a shift not just in how others treat you, but in how you see yourself. Number 1, silence removes access. Silence removes access, and you feel its power the moment you stop explaining yourself. When you choose not to speak, not to react, not to chase understanding, you are not withdrawing out of fear. You are reclaiming ownership of your attention. You stop handing out backstage passes to your inner world. You let the noise starve. The Stoics understood this deeply. They knew that access is a privilege, not a right, and that every word you offer is a door you open. When you close the door calmly, without drama, without announcements, something shifts. You are no longer available for manipulation, for emotional bargaining, for endless interpretation. You become still, and stillness, when it's deliberate, is unsettling in the most instructive way. It forces others, and more importantly, you, to confront reality without your commentary softening the edges. You've been taught that silence is weakness, that not responding means losing ground. But notice how much energy leaks out of you when you feel compelled to clarify, defend, justify. The Stoics warned against this reflex. Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one, Marcus Aurelius wrote. Silence is how you become rather than perform. When you remove access, you stop participating in games you never agreed to play. You don't announce boundaries, you embody them. You don't threaten consequences, you let absence do the talking. And absence speaks fluently. It says, "My peace is not negotiable," it says. "I decide where my energy goes," it says. "If you want access, you must meet me where I stand, not where you wish to pull me." This is where the real discipline comes in, because silence isn't passive. It's active restraint. It's choosing not to discharge every thought like a reflex. Epictetus reminded his students that we have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak. Listening includes listening to your own urge to react and letting it pass. When you stay quiet, you interrupt the loop that keeps you entangled. You refuse to feed the cycle. Over time, this trains you. You begin to feel the difference between what is necessary and what is habitual. Silence becomes a filter. Only what is essential makes it through. Everything else dissolves before it reaches your lips. Detachment sharpens when you realize that access isn't about proximity, it's about permission. You can be present and still inaccessible. You can be calm and still closed. This is not cruelty, it's clarity. Seneca wrote, "He who suffers before it is necessary suffers more than is necessary." Much of that unnecessary suffering comes from overexposure, too many explanations, too much emotional availability, too much trying to be understood. Silence removes that excess. It trims the fat. You stop suffering ahead of time by refusing to narrate every internal weather pattern. You let things be as they are. You keep your center. There's a quiet confidence that grows when you practice this. You start to trust yourself to handle things without broadcasting them. You stop outsourcing validation through words. Instead of asking to be seen, you stand still and let visibility happen or not. Either way, you're intact. This is where Stoic detachment becomes practical, not philosophical. You're not numbing yourself. You're choosing not to bleed in public. You're choosing to respond only when it aligns with your values, not when your nerves demand release. Silence becomes a habit, then a skill, then a strength. To build this strength, you need exercises, not slogans. Start small. For the next 7 days, practice delayed response. When you feel the urge to reply immediately, especially when emotion is high, pause. Count 10 slow breaths, not to calm down but to observe. Notice how the urgency spikes, then fades. Write nothing. Say nothing. Let the moment pass. You'll discover that many things don't need your voice to resolve. This teaches you that access is optional, not automatic. Next, practice silent mornings. For the first hour of your day, don't speak unless absolutely required. No explanations. No rehearsing conversations in your head. Just presence. This resets your baseline. You begin the day owning your attention instead of renting it out. Marcus Aurelius advised starting each day by reminding yourself what you can and cannot control. Silence helps you feel that distinction instead of merely understanding it intellectually. Another exercise, intentional non-disclosure. Pick one thought, plan, or irritation and decide you will not share it with anyone. Not because it's secretive, but because it's yours. Carry it without commentary. Notice how your sense of self solidifies when you stop dispersing your inner life. Epictetus taught that freedom comes from focusing on what is within your control. Your words are always within your control. Guard them. You may notice discomfort at first. Silence can feel like standing without armor, but that discomfort is just the old habit protesting. Stay with it. Seneca warned that no man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity. Silence is a mild adversity. It trains you to tolerate the tension of not being understood, not being affirmed, not being responded to immediately. That tolerance is power. It means you are no longer dependent on feedback to remain steady. As you continue, silence starts to clean your inner space. Fewer words mean fewer regrets. Less explaining means fewer entanglements. You become harder to provoke, not because you're indifferent, but because you're selective. Detachment isn't coldness, it's precision. You choose when to engage and when to step back. You stop chasing closure through conversation and start finding it through acceptance. Things end when you stop feeding them. Silence removes access, and without access, many problems starve. Make this a long-term habit. Once a week, do a silence audit. Ask yourself, where did I speak out of impulse rather than intention? Where did I explain when I could have simply stood firm? Don't judge, adjust. Improvement here is quiet. No one needs to know you're practicing this. In fact, it works best when no one does. The best revenge is not to be like your enemy, Marcus Aurelius wrote. Silence ensures that. You don't mirror chaos. You don't amplify noise. You remain yourself. Over time, you'll notice something subtle and profound. When you do speak, people listen. Your words carry weight because they're rare and considered. You're no longer background noise. You're deliberate. That's the Stoic edge. Silence removes access not to punish, but to protect what matters most. Your clarity, your time, your inner order. Adopt it. Practice it daily. Let your calm become non-negotiable. And remember, your life doesn't need commentary to be powerful. Sometimes the strongest move you can make is to say nothing at all and walk on, complete within yourself. Number 2, attention is currency. Attention is currency. And right now you're spending it whether you realize it or not. Every glance, every emotional reaction, every moment you replay someone else's words in your head, that's a payment. The Stoics understood this deeply. They knew that attention is finite, precious, and powerful. And they knew that withdrawing it calmly and without announcement is one of the strongest moves you can make. Not as revenge, not as manipulation, but as self-command. When you stop feeding what disturbs you, it weakens. When you stop chasing validation, you regain authority over your inner world. This is where detachment begins, not with indifference, but with choice. You don't need to punish loudly. You don't need to explain yourself. The moment you stop reacting, something shifts. The Stoics believe that nothing outside of you can truly harm you unless you grant it permission. And permission is given through attention. Every time you argue in your head, every time you wait for acknowledgement, every time you feel the pull to prove something, you are handing over your most valuable resource. Ask yourself, slowly and honestly, is this worth the cost? If attention is currency, then emotional reactions are luxury expenses. You can't afford them forever. At some point, discipline has to step in. Detachment doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you care deliberately. You stop leaking energy into places that give you nothing in return. You stop narrating your worth through other people's responses. The Stoics warned against this trap. One of their central ideas was that peace comes from wanting only what depends on you. Your attention depends on you, always. Where you place it today shapes how you feel tomorrow. This isn't abstract philosophy, it's a daily practice. A quiet one, a demanding one. When you detach, you're not playing games. You're refusing to be pulled into games you didn't agree to play. Silence becomes a boundary, calm becomes a statement. The absence of reaction is not emptiness, it's containment. And people feel that. Not because you're trying to send a message, but because grounded stillness is unsettling to chaos. The Stoics didn't chase control over others. They chased mastery over themselves. That's the real leverage. There's a quote that captures this perfectly. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. Read that again, slowly. This is the foundation. If your attention is constantly hijacked by external noise, then your mind is not your own. Detachment is how you take it back. You don't announce it, you embody it. Here, where the habit change begins. Start noticing where your attention goes automatically. Not judging it, just noticing. Notice the mental pull to react, to check, to ruminate. That pull is not you, it's conditioning. And conditioning can be undone. Each time you resist feeding it, you weaken the habit. Each time you choose stillness over reaction, you reclaim a fraction of your power. Small choices, repeated quietly. Try this once a day, practice intentional withdrawal. Choose one moment where you would normally react internally, emotionally, mentally, and do nothing instead. No commentary, no inner speech. Just breathe and let the urge pass. It will feel uncomfortable at first. That's a good sign. Discomfort is the sound of old patterns losing their grip. You're not suppressing emotion, you're observing it without surrendering control. That's a Stoic skill. Another exercise, treat your attention like a budget. In the morning, decide where it deserves to go. Your work, your values, your discipline. When distractions appear, and they will, ask yourself a simple question. Is this aligned with who I'm becoming? If the answer is no, let it starve. What you starve eventually dies, not dramatically, quietly. The Stoics spoke often about self-respect, though not in modern terms. Self-respect is built when your actions match your standards. If your standard is inner calm, then reacting impulsively is too expensive. If your standard is self-mastery, then chasing external validation is a bad investment. You don't need to prove anything to anyone. Needing to prove is a sign that attention is leaking outward instead of being anchored within. There's another line worth sitting with. If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. That estimate is shaped by attention. What you focus on grows heavier. What you ignore loses gravity. Detachment is not coldness, it's precision. You're choosing where weight belongs. As you practice this, something subtle happens. You become less predictable. Not in a strategic sense, but in an emotional one. You stop being pulled by every stimulus. Your presence changes. You're not rushing to respond. You're not over-explaining. You're not defending your silence. You're simply centered. And that centeredness becomes your default. That's the Stoic punishment that requires no words, the refusal to be shaken. Make this part of your identity. You are someone who guards their attention fiercely. You don't give it away to every thought, every provocation, every imagined slight. You decide, again and again, Some days you'll slip, that's fine, return to the practice. Progress here is not loud, it's cumulative. End your day with a brief reflection. Ask yourself where your attention went, what strengthened you, what drained you. No guilt, just data. The Stoics ended their days this way, not to criticize themselves, but to refine themselves. You're doing the same, you're training discernment. Detachment is not disappearance, it's elevation. You rise above the noise not by fighting it, but by refusing to fuel it. Attention is currency, and you are done overspending. You're investing now in clarity, in discipline, in inner freedom. And the more you practice this, the more unmovable you become. Quietly, powerfully, without saying a word. Number 3, detachment exposes imbalance. Detachment exposes imbalance because the moment you stop feeding something with your attention, the truth rushes in. Not gradually, not politely. It arrives all at once. When you pull your energy back, when you stop reacting, chasing, explaining, fixing, or proving, whatever depended on you being emotionally available starts to wobble. You feel it immediately. So do they. This is the part most people misunderstand about detachment. It isn't passive. It isn't weak. It's not doing nothing. It's an intentional withdrawal of emotional currency. And once you do that, imbalance can no longer hide behind noise. As Epictetus said, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. Detachment requires that kind of courage. The courage to stop managing how you're perceived. The courage to let the imbalance show itself without stepping in to stabilize it. When you detach, you're no longer acting as the counterweight. You're no longer absorbing tension, smoothing friction, or compensating for what someone else refuses to regulate. And that's when things get uncomfortable, especially for anyone who benefited from your overgiving. You might feel a pull to jump back in, to re-engage, to fix the discomfort. That urge is the habit talking. That urge is the old pattern begging to be restored. This is where Stoic discipline matters. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." Detachment is the act of reclaiming that power, not by force. By restraint, by refusing to rush in and correct an imbalance that was never yours to carry in the first place. Here's the shift you need to make. Stop thinking of detachment as absence. It's presence, just redirected. You are still fully here. You're just no longer leaking energy into places that drain you. When you detach, silence becomes a mirror. The lack of reaction becomes information. If something collapses without your constant input, it was never stable to begin with. And that realization is not cruel, it's clarifying. The Stoics understood this deeply. Seneca wrote, "He who suffers before it is necessary suffers more than is necessary." Detachment cuts unnecessary suffering at the root. It exposes where you've been prepaying emotional costs that were never required of you. You might notice that once you detach, tension increases, at least at first. That's not failure, that's exposure. You're watching imbalance come into the light. When you stop explaining yourself, people who relied on your explanations feel lost. When you stop reacting, people who fed on reaction feel unsettled. When you stop giving reassurance, those who outsource their stability to you feel the weight of it. This is not punishment by aggression. This is consequence by clarity. Detachment doesn't attack. It simply removes the illusion that everything was fine. And the Stoics would tell you that illusions are the real enemy. Not people, not situations, illusions. What makes this so powerful is that detachment doesn't require confrontation. You're not arguing, you're not demanding, you're not negotiating. You're simply choosing where your attention lives. And attention, whether you realize it or not, is your most valuable resource. Once you stop scattering it, you start seeing clearly. You start noticing where things feel one-sided, where effort flows only in one direction, where your calm was being mistaken for compliance. This is where imbalance gets uncomfortable because it can no longer hide behind your goodwill. Now, here's the hard truth you need to hear. Detachment will test your identity. If you've built a sense of worth around being needed, being responsive, being emotionally available at all times, pulling back can feel like losing yourself. But you're not losing yourself. You're meeting yourself, stripped of roles, stripped of habits, stripped of expectations. Epictetus warned, first say to yourself what you would be and then do what you have to do. Detachment is the space where that becomes possible. Without space, you're just reacting. With space, you're choosing. To practice this, start small and deliberate. For the next 7 days, notice every impulse to immediately respond, mentally, emotionally, internally. You don't have to act on it, just notice it. That pause alone is detachment in motion. Then extend the pause. Count 3 breaths before reacting to anything that provokes you. Not to suppress emotion, but to stop emotion from running the show. The Stoics didn't deny feelings. They denied feelings authority. That distinction matters. Ask yourself, if I don't intervene right now, what actually happens? Sit with the discomfort of not stepping in. Let imbalance reveal itself without your interference. Another exercise, redirect your energy daily into something that requires no validation, no outcome, no approval, something quiet, something disciplined. The Stoics trained their minds through repetition, not inspiration. Write 1 page each day answering this question. Where am I over-functioning emotionally? Don't judge the answer, just observe it. Awareness is already detachment, and once you see it, you can choose differently. You'll also need to train yourself to tolerate being misunderstood. This is non-negotiable. Detachment exposes imbalance, and imbalance often responds with confusion, projection, or resistance. That's not your signal to re-engage, that's your signal to stay steady. Marcus Aurelius put it simply, the best revenge is not to be like your enemy. Detachment keeps you from being pulled into patterns that don't align with who you're becoming. You don't need to prove anything. You don't need to clarify your silence. Silence is already doing the work. As you practice this, something subtle but profound happens. Your nervous system recalibrates. You stop living in anticipation of reaction. You stop managing outcomes. You start acting from principle instead of impulse. That's Stoic power, quiet, grounded, unshakable, and the imbalance, it either corrects itself or reveals that it never intended to. Either way, you win clarity, and clarity is freedom. So take this seriously, not dramatically, seriously. Detach not as an escape, but as a discipline. Withdraw your attention where it's abused. Invest it where it's aligned. Let imbalance show itself without interference. Trust that you don't need to punish, explain, or chase. As Seneca reminded us, the greatest remedy for anger is delay. Detachment is that delay stretched into a way of being. Stay with it. Practice it daily. And watch how much lighter you feel when you stop carrying what was never yours. Number 4, emotional control flips power when you stop reacting. Something strange happens. The entire emotional balance of power shifts toward you, not in a loud, dramatic way, not with speeches or ultimatums, quietly, internally. And that's the point. Most people believe power comes from expression, explaining yourself, defending your stance, proving your worth, correcting the record. The Stoics saw it differently. They understood that the person who controls their inner world controls the situation, even when nothing is said. When you master emotional control, you stop leaking energy. You stop feeding chaos. You stop giving others the satisfaction of knowing they've moved you. And that absence of reaction becomes heavier than any argument you could have made. You've probably noticed how easy it is for emotions to hijack your behavior. A comment lingers longer than it should. A perceived slight echoes in your head. Your body tenses. Your mind rehearses responses that never quite land. This is where power usually slips away, right at the moment you feel compelled to respond. The Stoics warned against this reflex. Epictetus said, "It is not things themselves that disturb us, but our judgments about them." Read that slowly. The disturbance isn't external, it's internal permission. And the moment you withdraw that permission, the grip loosens. You begin to realize that not every emotional impulse deserves action. Not every feeling deserves a voice. And once you internalize that, you stop being predictable. Predictability is weakness. Emotional discipline is leverage. Detachment doesn't mean you stop feeling. That's a common misunderstanding. You still feel irritation, disappointment, even anger, but you don't let those emotions drive the wheel. You observe them, you slow them down, you decide what happens next. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." That strength isn't explosive, it's steady. It's the ability to pause when every instinct urges you to react, to breathe when your ego wants to speak, to choose silence when noise would feel easier. That pause is where dominance lives, not over others but over yourself. And self-mastery always comes first. When you detach emotionally, you stop negotiating with your impulses. You stop explaining yourself to people who aren't listening anyway. You stop chasing validation through emotional display. This is where the power flip happens. People expect reactions. They expect justification. They expect visible emotional movement. When it doesn't come, the dynamic shifts. You're no longer participating in the emotional transaction. And that unsettles people, not because you're cold, but because you're controlled. Seneca wrote, "The greatest remedy for anger is delay." Delay isn't avoidance, it's strategy. It gives you time to decide whether something even deserves your energy. Most things don't. You don't need to announce your detachment. You practice it quietly. Start with awareness. When something triggers you, don't rush to fix the feeling. Sit with it. Name it internally without judging it. Say, "This is irritation" or "This is frustration." That small act creates distance. You're no longer inside the emotion, you're looking at it. Then ask yourself a single question. Is acting on this emotion going to make me stronger or weaker? Not right or wrong, stronger or weaker. That framing cuts through ego fast. Strength almost always chooses restraint. Another habit to build is shortening the gap between stimulus and response. Not by reacting faster, but by responding less. You don't owe immediate access to your emotions. You don't owe clarity on demand. Practice letting moments pass without commentary. Let silence do its work. Marcus Aurelius advised, "Be like the rock that the waves keep crashing over. It stands unmoved and the raging of the sea still falls around it." You don't stop the waves. You stop being moved by them. That's the discipline. That's the edge. Emotional control also means abandoning the need to be understood. This is hard. The ego wants acknowledgement. It wants recognition. It wants to be seen as reasonable, justified, correct. But Stoicism asks you to release that craving. When you stop needing others to validate your emotional reality, you reclaim your autonomy. Epictetus was blunt about this. If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. Translation: stop performing your emotions for approval. Do the inner work instead. The more you internalize this, the quieter you become. And quiet confidence is unmistakable. You can train this like a muscle, daily, intentionally. One simple exercise is emotional fasting. Pick a set period, an hour, a morning, a full day, where you commit to not reacting emotionally outwardly. You feel everything internally, but you don't express it. No visible frustration, no defensive explanations, no emotional storytelling, just observation. At the end, reflect on how much energy you saved. Another exercise is negative visualization, a Stoic staple. Briefly imagine emotional provocation before it happens. Not to suffer in advance, but to rehearse calm. When the moment arrives, your nervous system recognizes the terrain. You've been there before. Calm becomes familiar. Journaling helps too, but not emotional venting. Instead, write in questions. What part of me wanted to react? What belief was threatened? What outcome was I chasing emotionally? This turns emotional chaos into data. Data is manageable. Emotion without structure is. Seneca believed that examining your day was essential to freedom. Each night, review moments where emotion pulled at you. Not with shame, with curiosity. Improvement follows awareness naturally. As you practice this, something subtle changes in how you move through the world. You're less reactive, more deliberate. You stop chasing emotional closure from others. You give it to yourself. And that's when detachment becomes power, not as punishment, but as presence. You're no longer controlled by the emotional climate around you. You carry your own weather. People feel that. They sense stability, and stability commands respect without demanding it. The goal isn't to become unfeeling, it's to become unshakable, to act from principle instead of impulse, to choose your responses like tools, not reflexes. The Stoics didn't seek domination over others, they sought freedom from inner slavery. And once you taste that freedom, you don't want to go back. You realize that silence can be a statement, restraint can be a boundary, and emotional control isn't suppression, it's sovereignty. Start practicing today. Pause longer, speak less, observe more, and watch how the balance of power quietly, inevitably, shifts in your favor. Number 5, absence creates consequence. Absence creates consequence in a way words never can. And once you truly feel that, you stop wasting energy trying to be understood by people who benefit from misunderstanding you. When you remove yourself, your attention, your reactions, your availability, you're not playing games and you're not seeking revenge, you're restoring balance. The Stoics understood something modern people forget. Attention is a currency and you've been giving it away like it's worthless. Marcus Aurelius warned, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. When you withdraw, you reclaim that power. You stop feeding cycles that depend on your emotional labor. You stop explaining yourself to audiences that aren't listening. You don't announce your absence. You don't dramatize it. You simply step back, and in that space, consequences begin to form naturally. Silence creates pressure. Distance introduces clarity, not because you want to punish, but because reality finally gets room to speak. This is where your discipline shows. Anyone can react. Anyone can argue, but it takes restraint to do nothing, to say nothing, to let your absence do the talking. That restraint is not weakness, it's authority. And when you adopt this habit, you start to notice how quickly the world rearranges itself once you're no longer propping it up with your presence. What makes absence so powerful is that it removes the illusion of control others think they have over you. As long as you're always there, responding, fixing, accommodating, you're predictable. Predictability invites entitlement. The Stoics didn't chase respect, they made themselves immovable. Epictetus said, if you wish to be invincible, make yourself indifferent to what does not depend on you. Absence is indifference in action. You're no longer available on demand. You no longer rush to fill every silence. You stop overperforming just to maintain peace. And here's the uncomfortable truth you need to sit with. If your absence creates chaos, it means your presence was being exploited. That's not something to feel guilty about. That's information. Let it sober you up. Let it sharpen you. You're not responsible for how people behave when you're no longer cushioning their consequences. Detachment isn't coldness, it's clarity. It's choosing not to interfere with lessons people need to learn on their own. Seneca put it plainly, he who suffers before it is necessary suffers more than is necessary. When you stay where you're not respected, you suffer in advance. When you step away, you end that suffering immediately. And in doing so, you allow others to feel the weight of what your presence was quietly carrying. Now here's where this becomes a practice, not just an idea. You don't wait for a dramatic moment to disappear. You train yourself daily to loosen your grip. Start with a simple exercise. For 1 week, delay your responses. Not to manipulate, but to observe. Feel the urge to jump in, to clarify, to defend, to soothe, and resist it. Sit with the discomfort. That discomfort is withdrawal from dependence, and like any withdrawal, it burns before it heals. Another exercise, remove one unnecessary obligation from your routine, just one. Notice how the world doesn't collapse. Notice how your nervous system starts to calm. You're teaching yourself that you are not required to be everywhere for everyone all the time. Then take it further. Each morning, remind yourself, my value does not come from being needed. Say it until it stops feeling like a lie. This is Stoic training in real time. You are practicing voluntary absence, the same way Stoics practiced voluntary discomfort to prove to themselves they were free. And as you do this, something subtle happens. You become less reactive, more centered, harder to provoke. Your silence gains weight because it's no longer empty, it's chosen. Absence creates consequence because it forces others to confront reality without your interference, but more importantly, it forces you to confront yourself. Who are you when you're not performing? Who are you when no one is pulling on you? That's the self Stoicism is trying to uncover. Not the version shaped by approval, but the one anchored in principle. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." Being one sometimes means stepping away. Letting your boundaries be felt instead of explained. Letting silence replace speeches. Letting distance teach what words never could. This is not about disappearing forever. It's about knowing when your presence adds value and when your absence restores it. Adopt this habit slowly, deliberately, without anger. You're not punishing anyone, you're disciplining yourself. And in that discipline, you'll find something rare, peace that doesn't depend on being seen, heard, or validated. Just steady, grounded self-respect. Number 6, no reaction denies validation. When you stop reacting, something subtle but powerful happens. The noise dies. The tug on your attention loosens. And in that quiet, you take back authority over yourself. Most people don't realize how much of their energy is spent feeding things that don't deserve it. Every reaction is a form of permission, a nod, a signal that says, "You matter enough to move me." Detachment cuts that signal clean, not with drama, not with hostility, just with absence. And absence, when chosen deliberately, carries weight. This is what the Stoics understood long before "silence is power" became a cliché. They knew that what you refuse to react to cannot rule you. You're not denying emotion by doing this. You're denying validation. There's a difference. Emotions will still arise: annoyance, irritation, the urge to correct, to defend, to prove. Stoicism never asked you to become numb. It asked you to become selective. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." When you react automatically, you hand that power away. When you pause and choose nothing, you keep it. That pause is where your freedom lives, not in the reaction, not in the clever response you rehearsed, in the restraint. Think about how often reactions are performative, even internal ones. You replay, you argue in your head, you tense up. All of that is still participation, still engagement, still validation. Detachment is not passive, it's disciplined. It's you deciding that not everything gets access to your inner world. Seneca warned, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." Reactions inflate things. Silence shrinks them. When you deny a reaction, you deny fuel. Without fuel, disturbances starve. They don't get the satisfaction of having moved you, and more importantly, you don't get dragged away from yourself. This is where people get it wrong. They think punishment requires action, a sharp word, a withdrawal that's loud and visible. Stoic detachment is quieter than that. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't posture. It simply withholds what others unconsciously seek: acknowledgement, attention, emotional confirmation. Epictetus put it plainly, "If you want to be invincible, make yourself independent of the goodwill of others." Independence starts when your reactions are no longer automatic offerings. You don't owe your nervous system to every external pull. You don't owe a response just because a stimulus appeared. This takes practice because your habits are old. You've been trained to react quickly, to feel that silence is weakness or avoidance. It's not. Silence can be a boundary, a strong one, and boundaries don't need speeches. They need consistency. When you deny reaction again and again, you rewire yourself. You teach your mind that urgency is optional, that dignity doesn't shout. That calm is not something you wait for, it's something you choose repeatedly, even when it feels uncomfortable. Here's where you start, not by suppressing, but by noticing. When something pulls at you internally, don't rush to resolve it. Label it quietly. This is an impulse to react. That naming alone creates space. Then breathe once slowly, just one breath, long exhale. In that breath, remind yourself of Marcus Aurelius' line, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." Revenge here isn't about another person, It's about not becoming ruled by the same chaos. The moment you choose not to react, you've already won something important. You've stayed aligned with yourself. Another exercise, train selective response. For a set period, an hour, a morning, a day, commit to responding only to what aligns with your values. Everything else gets neutrality, not coldness, neutrality. Imagine your attention as currency. Spend it deliberately. If something doesn't earn it, it doesn't get it. This isn't avoidance, it's investment. Seneca advised, associate with people who are likely to improve you. The same applies internally. Associate your attention only with thoughts and triggers that actually strengthen you. You'll notice discomfort at first. Your mind will itch to explain, justify, correct. Let it itch. That's the habit dying. You don't need to kill it aggressively, just don't feed it. Over time, the itch fades faster. You'll feel lighter, clearer, less entangled. Detachment creates room to think, room to act intentionally instead of reflexively. And that room is where self-respect grows. Another practice, rehearse silence mentally. Not situations, not scenes, just the state. Sit for a few minutes and imagine yourself as unmoved, not rigid, fluid, but centered. Thoughts pass, urges pass, you remain. Epictetus said, don't explain your philosophy, embody it. This is embodiment training. You're not planning clever responses, you're practicing non-attachment. The goal isn't to look strong, it's to be steady. Detachment also protects your energy long-term. Every reaction costs something. Attention, emotional charge, mental bandwidth. When you deny validation, you conserve that energy and redirect it inward, toward discipline, toward focus, toward the quiet confidence that doesn't need witnesses. You start acting less from ego and more from principle. And principle doesn't rush. Principle waits, observes, and decides. Make this a daily habit. At the end of the day, reflect briefly. Where did you react out of impulse? Where did you choose restraint? Don't judge, just note. Marcus Aurelius did this nightly, reminding himself to review the day without cruelty. Progress here is subtle. It won't announce itself, but you'll feel it. You'll notice fewer internal storms, less need to be seen, less urgency to prove, more calm presence, more self-command. No reaction denies validation, but more importantly, it affirms you. It tells your mind that you are not available for every disturbance, that your peace is not negotiable, that your worth doesn't depend on engagement. This is Stoic punishment not as harm, but as withdrawal of permission. And once you learn it, you carry it everywhere. Quiet, firm, unshakable. Number 7, calmness unsettles manipulators. Calmness unsettles manipulators in a way that shouting, explaining, or defending yourself never will. When you choose calm, you step out of the emotional tug of war they're desperate to keep you in. You can feel it the moment you stop reacting the way they expect. The air changes. Their usual tactics suddenly lose traction. You're no longer feeding the fire, and without fuel, it starts to sputter. This is where Stoic detachment becomes quietly powerful, not cold, not cruel, just steady. You're not trying to win. You're not trying to prove anything. You're simply refusing to hand over control of your inner state. And that refusal alone is deeply unsettling to anyone who relies on provoking reactions to feel powerful. Manipulators thrive on emotional movement. They need agitation, urgency, guilt, or anger to steer you. When you meet them with calm, you deny them access to the levers they want to pull. You're still present, still aware, but you're no longer available for emotional exploitation. The Stoics understood this intimately. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." That strength isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself. It shows up as composure when chaos is expected, as silence when drama is invited, as steadiness when pressure is applied. You're not suppressing emotion, you're mastering it. And mastery is intimidating to anyone who depends on your lack of it. Here's the part that changes everything. Calmness isn't passive. It's an active choice you make again and again. Every time you don't rush to explain yourself. Every time you pause instead of reacting. Every time you let a comment pass without grabbing onto it. These moments look small from the outside, but internally they're acts of discipline. Epictetus said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." Calmness often looks like that. It looks like not taking the bait, like not correcting every misinterpretation, like letting others sit with their discomfort while you remain at ease. Manipulators hate this because it forces them to confront something they can't control, your inner world. You don't need to be aggressive to be unmovable. You don't need to raise your voice to assert yourself. Calmness creates a kind of emotional vacuum. When someone throws tension at you and it doesn't stick, they feel exposed. Their tactics echo back to them unanswered. The Stoics practice this by constantly returning their attention inward, not to self-absorption but to self-governance. Ask yourself in the moment, what part of this is actually mine to manage? Almost always the answer is your response, not their tone, not their intention. Just your reaction. When you hold that line, you take away their advantage. This is where detachment becomes a form of punishment without cruelty. You're not retaliating. You're not withdrawing affection to manipulate back. You're simply not engaging on emotional terms that harm you. Seneca warned, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." Manipulators inflate imagined consequences. They want you to fear what might happen if you don't comply, don't react, don't bend. Calmness collapses that illusion. When you stay grounded, you see how little of their pressure actually has substance. And when you see it clearly, it loses its grip. To build this calm, you need habits, not intention. Start with the pause. Literally train yourself to wait 3 slow breaths before responding to anything that feels charged. Those breaths are a boundary. They separate stimulus from response. In that space, remind yourself, I don't have to attend every emotional invitation. Say it internally until it becomes natural. Another practice is negative visualization, a classic Stoic exercise. Briefly imagine the worst emotional reaction you could have, then imagine choosing calm instead, not because you're afraid, but because you're free. This trains your nervous system to see calmness as an option, not a weakness. You should also practice emotional labeling in private. When you feel provoked, name the sensation without judgment. Tension, heat, urge to explain, urge to defend. By naming it, you create distance. You are no longer the emotion, you're the observer of it. That shift alone weakens manipulation. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, "Begin the morning by saying to thyself, I shall meet with busybody, the ungrateful, arrogant, deceitful." He wasn't pessimistic. He was prepared. Preparation breeds calm. When you expect attempts to unsettle you, they stop feeling personal. They start feeling predictable. And predictability kills manipulation. Another powerful habit is voluntary silence, not as a tactic but as a discipline. Choose moments where you would normally over-explain and don't. Let your calm presence speak for you. You'll notice an internal discomfort at first. That's the old habit of seeking validation dying off. Stay with it. Over time, silence becomes solid instead of awkward. Manipulators often push harder when silence appears, hoping to crack it. That's your training ground. Stay steady. You're not ignoring reality. You're refusing to be dragged into unnecessary emotional labor. Calmness also requires you to detach from outcomes. This is crucial. If you're calm only to get a reaction, you're still hooked. True Stoic calm doesn't need applause or results. Epictetus put it simply, "Seek not that events should happen as you wish, but wish them to happen as they do." When you release the need to control how others respond, your calm becomes authentic. And authenticity is deeply disarming. People sense when you're not playing a game. Manipulators especially sense it, and it unsettles them because their usual scripts stop working. You should train this daily, even when nothing is wrong. Sit quietly for a few minutes and rehearse calm responses in your mind, not clever comebacks. Calm acknowledgments, neutral expressions, steady breathing. You're conditioning yourself. Just like physical training, emotional discipline compounds. The more you practice calmness when stakes are low, the more automatic it becomes when pressure rises. And when it becomes automatic, it becomes effortless. That's when detachment turns into quiet authority. Understand this. Calmness doesn't mean you tolerate disrespect or abandon boundaries. It means you enforce them without chaos. You don't need to convince. You don't need to threaten. You simply act in alignment with your values and let others adjust or not. The Stoics believe that character is revealed under pressure. Every time you choose calm over reactivity, you reinforce who you are becoming. Someone harder to manipulate, someone centered, someone internally free. So take this seriously, not as a personality trait but as a daily practice. Breathe before you speak. Observe before you react. Detach before you engage. Calmness isn't just an emotional state, it's a skill. And when you master it, you'll notice something subtle but profound. The people who once tried to pull your strings will either change their behavior or fade into the background. Not because you fought them, but because there was nothing left to grab. That is the power of detachment. Quiet, steady, unshakable. Number 8, self-focus becomes punishment when you stop chasing reactions and start turning your attention back toward yourself. Something quiet but decisive happens. The kind of power that doesn't announce itself begins to take shape. This is where self-focus becomes punishment, not because you're trying to hurt anyone, but because you're no longer feeding what once depended on your attention. You feel the pull to explain, to justify, to prove you're right, and you let it pass. You redirect that energy inward. You choose discipline over drama, growth over noise. The Stoics understood this deeply. They weren't interested in winning exchanges. They were interested in winning themselves. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." When you live from that place, the absence of your reaction becomes louder than any argument you could have made. You don't withdraw in bitterness. You withdraw in purpose. And that shift alone changes the entire dynamic. What most people miss is that detachment isn't passive. It's not apathy. It's active self-command. When you focus on refining your thoughts, your habits, your standards, you're making a statement without speaking. You're saying, "My time is valuable. My attention is sacred." And the moment you start treating it that way, anyone who relied on provoking you, draining you, or pulling you off center feels the loss. Seneca warned about this centuries ago when he said, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." Self-focus cuts off that imaginary suffering at the root. Instead of replaying conversations in your head, instead of rehearsing what you should have said, you bring yourself back to what you can control: your breath, your posture, your next decision. That return to the present isn't just calming, it's corrective. It retrains your nervous system to stop seeking validation through conflict. This is where the real punishment happens, though it doesn't look like punishment at all. You stop being available for emotional chaos. You don't reward disrespect with explanations. You don't reward indifference with over-effort. You don't reward manipulation with self-doubt. You reward yourself with focus, with routine, with clarity. Epictetus put it plainly: if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. In other words, let go of the urge to manage how you're perceived. When you stop performing for approval, people who expected access to your reactions feel the door quietly close. You didn't slam it. You didn't announce it. You simply walked away from the threshold and went back to work on yourself. Self-focus demands new habits, and this is where you take action. You don't wait to feel ready. You build structure so your mind has somewhere to return when it's tempted to spiral outward. Start with a daily check-in that asks one simple question: what is within my control right now? Ask it in the morning. Ask it when you feel triggered. Ask it before you respond to anything emotionally charged. Each time you ask, you weaken the habit of external fixation. Another exercise: set a short, intentional period each day. 10 minutes is enough, where you sit quietly and observe your thoughts without chasing them. Not to suppress them, just to notice. This is straight out of Stoic practice. You're training yourself to see thoughts as visitors, not commanders. Over time, this creates space. And in that space, you choose better. As you deepen this practice, you'll notice something subtle but powerful. Your silence starts to feel full, not empty. It's not awkward anymore, it's grounded. You don't rush to fill gaps. You don't over-explain your boundaries. You do narrate your growth. You let results speak. Marcus Aurelius advised, waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. That line isn't about morality in the abstract. It's about focus. When you invest your energy into becoming steady, disciplined, and self-directed, you remove yourself from petty exchanges without needing to declare it. Your calm becomes unresponsive to provocation. That calm isn't cold, it's deliberate. And for anyone used to controlling the narrative through your reactions, that calm is deeply unsettling. There's another layer to this that matters. Self-focus doesn't just deprive others of your attention, it nourishes you. And nourishment changes posture, tone, pace. You move differently, you speak differently, you listen without urgency. None of this is performative, it's a byproduct of alignment. To reinforce it, adopt a nightly reflection, another Stoic staple. Before sleep, ask yourself, where did I act from impulse today? Where did I act from principle? Don't judge the answers, study them. The goal isn't perfection, it's awareness. Seneca believed this daily accounting was essential because the first step toward improvement is to become aware of one's own faults. Awareness keeps you honest. It keeps the focus where it belongs, on refinement, not retaliation. You might feel the urge to check whether your detachment is working. Resist that. The moment you start measuring impact outwardly, you slip back into dependence. True self-focus is self-contained. You don't need confirmation. You don't need to be missed. You don't need recognition for your restraint. Epictetus reminds you, don't explain your philosophy, embody it. So you embody it through consistency, through showing up for your routines even when no one's watching, through choosing silence when ego wants the last word, through choosing progress when pride wants an apology. These choices compound, quietly, relentlessly. Over time, this becomes your identity, not someone who withdraws to punish, but someone who invests to elevate. The irony is that this elevation naturally creates distance. People sense when you're no longer available for games. They sense when your center of gravity has shifted inward. That shift is the Stoic version of consequence. No lectures, no ultimatums, just a recalibration of access. And you don't do it to make a point. You do it because your life feels better this way, cleaner, calmer, more directed. So take this seriously. Start small, but start today. Choose one habit that anchors you back to yourself and protect it fiercely. Treat your attention like a muscle you're training, not a resource you're leaking. When old impulses surface, don't fight them. Redirect them. When silence feels uncomfortable, stay with it a moment longer. When you want to react, breathe and return to what's yours to shape. This is how self-focus becomes punishment, not through harm, but through absence. And in that absence, you reclaim something far more valuable than control over others. You reclaim control over yourself. Number 9, boundaries speak louder than words. Boundaries speak louder than words because they remove you from the exhausting loop of explanation, defense, and reaction. When you stop announcing what you will tolerate and instead quietly decide what you will no longer engage with, something powerful shifts inside you. You are no longer trying to control outcomes. You are controlling yourself. That's the Stoic move. Not loud, not dramatic, clean, final. You don't punish by attacking, you punish by withdrawing access. And the moment you do that, you reclaim energy you didn't realize you were bleeding every day. You feel it immediately, a strange calm like stepping out of noise and into a quiet room. This is not avoidance. This is discipline. The Stoics understood that words are cheap currency. Marcus Aurelius warned, waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one. Boundaries work the same way. You don't argue about respect. You live in a way that requires it. When you over-explain your limits, you hand people leverage. You teach them where the line is so they can test it. When you stop explaining, you force reality to speak on your behalf. Silence becomes structure. Absence becomes feedback. And suddenly, the dynamic changes. not because you demanded it, but because you enforced it. Here's the uncomfortable truth you need to accept if you want detachment to work. People don't learn from your words nearly as much as they learn from your behavior. You can say, "Don't do this," 1,000 times, but the moment you keep showing up after it's done, you've taught the opposite lesson. Epictetus put it plainly: if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. Boundaries often make you look cold, distant, even unreasonable to those who benefited from your lack of them. That's the price. Pay it willingly. The discomfort is temporary. The self-respect is permanent. When you draw a boundary, don't announce it like a threat. Decide it like a law. Laws don't shout. They exist. And when violated, consequences follow automatically. This is where most people fail. They turn boundaries into negotiations. You're not here to negotiate with your impulses or with other people's expectations. You're here to live in alignment with your values. Seneca reminded us, "He who is brave is free." Freedom comes from limits you choose, not freedoms you chase. Detachment doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop clinging. You stop chasing reactions. You stop needing acknowledgement for your restraint. You let people feel the weight of your absence instead of the noise of your arguments. That's when boundaries speak the loudest. Not because you want to punish, but because you refuse to abandon yourself to keep others comfortable. Read that again. This is the habit you're building now, self-loyalty. Start noticing how often you explain yourself. Every unnecessary explanation is a leak. Plug it. Replace explanations with action. Replace justifications with consistency. If something violates your standards, you don't need to dramatize it. You adjust your behavior and move forward, calmly, quietly. This is Stoic power. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You always own the option of having no opinion." Apply that here. You don't need to label, condemn, or persuade. You choose and you move. Here's a simple exercise to train this muscle. For the next 7 days, practice deliberate non-response, not avoidance, non-response. When something triggers the old urge to explain, defend, or correct, pause, breathe. Ask yourself, does responding improve my character or just soothe my anxiety? If it's the second, let it pass. You are not obligated to react. You are training restraint, and restraint is strength. Another practice: define 3 non-negotiables for your time, your energy, and your values. Not on paper for the world to see, privately for you. Then observe where your actions contradict them. Don't judge yourself, adjust. Every adjustment is a boundary reinforced. Seneca advised, associate with people who are likely to improve you. That includes how you associate with your own habits. Distance yourself from behaviors that drain you. That's a boundary too. You'll notice resistance at first, internally and externally. Your mind will whisper that you're being harsh, selfish, uncaring. That's conditioning talking. Detachment isn't cruelty, it's clarity. You're not punishing others, you're ending the punishment of constant self-betrayal. The Stoics never promised comfort. They promised freedom from needless suffering. This is how you claim it. As you practice this, your presence changes. You speak less, but your words carry more weight. You explain less, but your decisions become clearer. People either rise to meet your standards or drift away. Both outcomes are acceptable. Epictetus said, "Don't explain your philosophy, embody it." Boundaries are embodiment. They are philosophy in motion. One more exercise, short, daily, effective. At the end of each day, ask yourself one question: where did I honor my boundary today without announcing it? Sit with the answer. Feel the quiet satisfaction. That's progress. That's alignment. Over time, this compounds into an unshakable inner posture. You stop seeking permission. You stop needing validation. You act from principle. This is how Stoics punish without saying a word, by refusing to participate in what diminishes them. No speeches, no ultimatums, just choice followed by action. And the most important part, you don't do it to control others. You do it to master yourself. That's the only control that has ever mattered. Number 10, indifference ends influence. When you stop feeding something your attention, it begins to starve. That's the quiet truth behind indifference ending influence. You don't need to announce your withdrawal. You don't need to explain yourself, defend your silence, or prove your strength. You simply stop participating. And the moment you do, the dynamic changes. Power drains away from whatever once pulled at you, because influence only survives when it is answered. The Stoics understood this deeply. They knew that most attempts to control, provoke, or dominate you only work because you react. Remove the reaction and the hook comes out clean. This is not weakness. This is restraint sharpened into a weapon. You feel it when you decide consciously that your emotional energy is no longer available on demand. You stop rehearsing imaginary arguments in your head. You stop explaining yourself to people who have already decided how they'll see you. You don't harden into bitterness. You soften into clarity. And in that clarity, influence evaporates. Indifference isn't coldness, it's selectivity. It's you deciding that your attention is valuable, finite, and not to be wasted on things that don't build you. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You always own the option of having no opinion." That line sounds simple until you actually live it. Having no opinion doesn't mean you don't notice. It means you refuse to let what you notice rearrange your inner world. This is where influence dies. People and situations lose their grip when they realize there's nothing to pull. No emotional leverage, no urgency, no visible wound to press. When you stop signaling that something can move you, it stops trying. You don't argue, you don't correct, you don't escalate, you remain steady. And steadiness is unsettling to anything that depends on reaction to survive. Here's the shift you're being asked to make. Stop thinking of indifference as passive. It's active discipline. It's an inner posture you choose again and again. Epictetus said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." That's indifference in action. You let go of the need to be understood. You release the craving to be validated. You accept ahead of time that others may misinterpret your silence or your calm, and you stay calm anyway. That's where influence ends, when you stop needing to manage how you're perceived. The moment you no longer chase control over other people's thoughts, they lose control over yours. This is freedom that doesn't announce itself. It just exists. You can feel how different this is from suppression. Suppression is tense. Indifference is relaxed. Suppression clenches its jaw and pretends not to care. Indifference genuinely doesn't care. And that difference matters, because what you repress will resurface. What you release dissolves. Seneca warned, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." Indifference cuts off that imagined suffering at the root. You stop replaying conversations. You stop predicting outcomes. You stop giving tomorrow's problems today's energy. Instead, you return to what is actually in front of you, your breath, your posture, your next deliberate action. Influence can't reach you there. It has no access point. This is where you take responsibility. Not for other people's behavior, but for your internal responses. You train yourself to pause, just to pause. That small gap between stimulus and response is where indifference is born. In that gap, you remind yourself, this does not require my energy. This does not deserve my reaction. This does not get a vote in how I feel today. At first, it feels unnatural. You're used to reacting quickly, emotionally, automatically. But with repetition, the pause becomes spacious, comfortable, almost automatic. And soon, indifference stops being something you do and becomes something you are. Calm, unavailable to manipulation, grounded. Try this as a daily exercise. For the next 7 days, notice the first moment you feel the urge to react, internally or externally. Don't suppress it, just notice it. Then delay your response by 10 slow breaths. Not to decide what to say, not to craft a better comeback, just to breathe and feel the urge pass through you. Most urges dissolve when they're not acted on. That's indifference training itself into your nervous system. Another exercise, write down 3 things each evening that try to pull your emotional attention that day. Next to each one, write a single sentence. This did not require my energy. You're teaching your mind a new filter. Over time, fewer things even make the list. As you practice this, something subtle but powerful happens. Your presence changes. You become quieter but not smaller. more reserved but not withdrawn. People sense that you are no longer easily moved, and unconsciously they adjust. Influence fades because it has nothing to work with. You're no longer predictable. You don't reward noise with attention. You don't reward pressure with urgency. You move at your own pace. Marcus Aurelius advised, "Be like the cliff against which the waves continually break, but it stands firm and tames the fury of the water around it." That's the image to carry with you. You don't need to fight the waves. You don't need to explain the cliff. You simply stand. Another practical habit: limit your inner commentary. When something happens, notice how quickly your mind starts narrating, judging, escalating. Practice cutting the story short. One sentence only. No elaboration. No emotional spin, just the fact. This keeps events from growing larger than they are. Influence feeds on exaggeration. Indifference shrinks things back to their true size. You'll be surprised how often what once felt overwhelming becomes manageable when you refuse to dramatize it internally. Indifference ends influence because it reclaims ownership of your attention. And attention is power. When you stop donating it freely, you become sovereign. You choose where your energy goes. You choose what matters. You choose what you will and will not engage with. This isn't about punishing others. It's about liberating yourself. The punishment is simply the absence of access. No explanation, no spectacle, just distance, calm distance. Commit to this not as a tactic, but as a way of being. Each day, ask yourself one quiet question: is this worth my attention? If the answer is no, let it pass without ceremony. No mental argument, no emotional residue, just let it go. Over time, you'll notice a deeper stillness forming, a steadiness that doesn't depend on circumstances. That's when you realize the real power of detachment. Influence doesn't end with confrontation. It ends with indifference. And once you've tasted that calm, you won't want to give it up again. When you stop explaining, stop chasing, and stop reacting, you don't lose power, you reclaim it. The Stoics understood this. The strongest response is often silence, not because you're hurt, but because you've risen above the need to prove anything. When someone no longer has access to your emotions, they lose their leverage. So walk away without noise. Let your absence do the talking. Let your calm become the consequence. If this message resonated, take a moment to reflect on where you're still giving energy that isn't deserved. And if you're building strength from the inside out, subscribe to Imagination Infinity, because true power is quiet, controlled, and unshakable. Stay disciplined. Stay detached.